obviously, the polling was not correct in many respects. Maybe broadly speaking it was, but it certainly overestimated the Democratic chances last night, not just in maintaining the Senate, which I think as of last week we sort of thought was definitely in jeopardy, but in particular in governor races across the country. So let's get first to the Senate results. As it stands now, Republicans will control the Senate. As it stands now, they have 52 Republican senators. There are 42 Democratic senators. There are 2 independent senators, Bernie Sanders, who will always caucus with the Democrats over Republicans, and Angus King from Maine, who may, in fact, end up caucusing with Republicans. And there are 3 races extant. Alaska has not been called yet, but it appears Dan Sullivan, the Republican challenger to Mark Begich, will win, which will increase the Republican majority to 53. Louisiana is going to a runoff. Bill Cassidy up by 1 point over Mary Landrieu. That runoff will happen in about a month, and likely Mary Landrieu will lose. However, one never knows with her. In Virginia, the race has not been, as far as I know, officially called for Mark Warner, but it appears that he has prevailed in what was a completely unexpected close race. So what you are probably looking at is a 53 or 54 to 43 or 44 Republican majority with 2 independents, which could split. Bernie Sanders caucusing with the Democrats, bringing them to 44 or 45. Angus King caucusing with the Republicans, bringing them to 55 or 54. We won't know, but largely that is academic. Then there's been some question as to whether or not Joe Manchin would caucus with the Republicans. His spokesman has said that's not going to happen. That's something you would be more likely to see if it was more evenly divided. In other words, if Joe Manchin could actually bring some real value to the Republican caucus and extract some value for his caucusing with them. So let's go over these Senate results, at least the ones that we had previewed. In Alaska, like I said, not called yet, but Dan Sullivan appears to be the winner. We won't know possibly for another week or two. Alaska is a big and remote state, or I should say there are remote places within Alaska, so it takes a while to count these ballots. It's still relatively close. In Colorado, Mark Udall got slammed. Democratic turnout there was abysmally low, particularly amongst even women. So Cory Gardner wins in Colorado. Mark Udall probably hurt by President Obama's delay on his executive action in terms of immigration reform. Apparently, he was the only one who wanted the president to go forward with that. In Louisiana, in North Carolina, in Arkansas, those Senate Democrats were hoping that the president would hold off. I'm not sure that would have made a difference in the final analysis. What we lose there, aside from, of course, the control of the Senate, and we've talked in the past a little bit about the implications of that, and we'll talk more about it later in the program, but specifically with Mark Udall, we lose a really one of only two genuine, at least in the context of the Senate, let's say. I want to put an asterisk next to that. But leaders or fighters, allies in dealing with the overreach of the national security state. Udall and Ron Wyden have been the most vocal opponents and greatest allies of those outside of elected politics who want to reform the NSA. In Georgia, David Perdue walked away with it. We anticipated at least a runoff. There will be no runoff in Georgia. 52, nearly 53% victory over Michelle Nunn. Like I said, in Louisiana, it's going to a runoff. Bill Cassidy only got 42% of the vote. He needed 50 to avoid a runoff. Mary Landrieu got 41% of the vote. There was a third Republican essentially running in that race, I believe. And so highly unlikely that Mary Landrieu can persevere. We won't see the massive amounts of money poured into that race, I would imagine. Although I would imagine you'll see Republicans probably outspend Democrats in that race. In Iowa, Joni Ernst really crushed Bruce Braley. Destroyed him. 52% to 43%. Joni Ernst, it remains to be seen if she will let her freak flag fly in the Senate. But I will say that she has a very bizarre habit of laughing after almost everything she says. Now, maybe she was just very happy last night.
She's a funny person.
She's a very funny person,
She's
and
she
she acknowledges her own hilarity, I guess.
She
in some
either
respects.
wanted to repeal the New Deal and send us back to Puritan times, or workshop material with Sarah Silverman.
That's right.
Yeah, those are her two paths. It is interesting. She's never said anything funny, and she does always laugh. Really
There is a
hard. I don't
nervous
think-
laughter afterwards.
It wasn't just
but,
in the speech last night. It's happened a lot of other times.
Okay.
I would imagine if there was sound to that Ebola thing, she was laughing pretty hard when she was talking to Charlie.
So Joni Ernst will be in the Senate from Iowa. Now, of course, Iowa, one of those purple states. Colorado, one of those increasingly blue states. You know, Georgia, Louisiana, Alaska, Kentucky, where Mitch McConnell also destroyed Allison, London, and Grimes. That's not terribly surprising. These were uphill battles. Iowa and Colorado, those were key races where Democrats needed to win, obviously. In New Hampshire, the one race that really put a smile on my face last night and would have been extremely hard, particularly for this program to live down. Jeanne Shaheen defeated Scott Brown nearly 52 to 48%. And Scott Brown making history, having been the first person in the nation's history to lose 2 Senate races to 2 different women in 2 different states.
The irony abounds, brah. But like, seriously, I mean, like,
What do you mean the irony abounds?
I don't know, dude. That was weird. It was like I just sounded queer for a second, like something else took over my body. But you know, I got some friends. You know, King called me up yesterday, told me to feel better. Queen was on the line, obviously. You know, these are my friends from my other days of being in the Senate.
Kings and queens.
Kings and queens, they felt bad. There was a Duke, too, a Duchess. So there was a lot of calls like that. And, you know, go to Mass, go to Rhode Island, whatever. I might even frickin' run for president.
Dude, there's no problem. Massachusetts 2.0. That's what I'm saying. Everybody's expecting me to go to a third state. No, I'm just going to keep going Massachusetts, New Hampshire. Massachusetts, New Hampshire. I'm just going to go. I'm doing the 128.
I'm ready to
Route
run against
128
Washington.
road.
I'm ready to run against the
I'm just
dude.
going right across the border every time. That way, I don't have to meet new people. This way, I go back to Massachusetts. Hey, look who's back. And then I go back to New Hampshire. Look who's back again. I could do this forever.
Familiarity breeds liking and stuff. The question is, why didn't I run for governor? And the answer to that question is,
too much work.
That's like an actual job.
If I really want to get a real job, I'll go get a real job. I'm not going to do one for like, dude, I was getting paid a couple $100,000 for sitting on a board of a company that didn't even exist.
It was pretty
I'm gonna
awesome.
go and work. You got to stay late at the office if you're a governor, right? You got to be on call. Senator, you can just sort of hang out. You say a couple of words. You take a trip.
You get some campaign contributions. You meet a queen. It's awesome. But, you know, like on that board, they would say, like,
Governor, what am I going to do? Shovel potholes? I'll go work for the DPW?
Yeah.
Give me a break. All right, let's.
I just have to do one last one.
I'm begging him,
It's
begging
awesome
him to run
working-
again.
Working on the board, because they would come in and I'd be like, oh, guys, is this, like, strictly speaking, first of all, does this company exist? And they'd be like, yeah. And then I'd be like, does what you're doing fit within legal confines or whatever? And they'd be like, totally. And I'd be like, awesome. Meeting adjourned. Check cleared. That was an awesome job.
Oh God, I don't know what we're gonna do if he doesn't run for another office. Dude,
It'd be like the next Catherine Harris thing.
the only thing I could hope.
People would be like,
the
who
only
the hell is that?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. All right. So in North Carolina, this one is also heartbreaking. Tom Tillis beats Kay Hagan by a percentage and a half. Just not enough. I mean, the story across the board is basically the structural one. Democrats just did not get their base out. In South Dakota, Mike Rounds handily defeated Rick Weiland and Larry Pressler. And like I said, in Virginia, Mark Warner, it appears, has just eked by Ed Gillespie.
Ed Gillespie is one of the most sleazy people in American politics, not even as a Republican. I mean, he's an operative and a lobbyist. And I guess the only answer to that is Virginia's Democratic governor is a fundraiser.
Right.
I mean, I don't know where they, like, find these candidates. It's atrocious.
Well, remember that, 2008 was a wave election for the Democrats. You're going to see these type of losses. Again, it was in Virginia. It was a turnout issue. This turnout was just shockingly low. But people were very much surprised by how close that race was. I mean, it was on nobody's radar. Nobody's.
And isn't Warner the type of guy who has, I mean, less so recently, but he's always like the kind of media interest and conversation about him relative to actual excitement about him by actual people who vote, isn't he one of those like classic disproportionate cases?
He is about as close to no labels as you can be and still be a Democratic or a Republican senator. The bottom line, though, is, and that raises the question of, what will be the message that the Democratic Party takes away from this? I don't even know that there is a monolith that one could say the Democratic Party, but Al Franken won his election 53% to 42%.
Oh.
And so that's a decisive victory for Al Franken. Decisive. And my hope is that we will see Al Franken become a national leader who will be out there. He has been studiously avoiding national media, does a lot of Minnesota media, avoids national media. In fact, I believe that it's possible that the first and one of the few, I know he's given a few, national interviews or national programs was one that I did with him on Ring of Fire Radio and the Majority Report. I think we did it live. I'm not sure that we did it live on the Majority Report from Netroots. Now, granted, it was in Minnesota at the time, but nevertheless, but it's clear that Democratic voters are not going to come out and vote for nothing.